Good evening and welcome to Community Forum. I'm your host, Byron Campbell, my co-host, Chris Diali. Chris, good evening. We have a special guest this evening. We're going to be introducing him shortly. But before we start this evening program, there are community developments that we need to briefly home in on, Chris.
A very good evening to you, Byron, and to all our viewers, and thanking them for allowing us back into the space to have some discussions as we see it. So you want to kick it off on the community issues?
Yeah, Chris. I mean, well, the first one I want to touch on is the COVID-19. We heard the chief medical officer earlier this week, again, pointing to a couple of things, that we have a rise in COVID-19 infections. We have cases admitted to the hospital also. And he was reiterating the point that COVID is here and the need for caution, the need for discipline. And that's a very important message, I thought.
Yes, and it's coming at a time when our carnival season is right on the doorsteps.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what's his name? The
CMO.
CMO was alluding to the fact that we have infections. The infections climbing. I think he said from 20-something to 40-something to 70-something. Mm-hmm. So the rate is increasing. So we need to pay attention as a nation that we need to do what we need to do to protect ourselves and exercise caution.
Crucial, yeah.
Because you don't want us to have a serious spike either before or after Carnival that puts the country in a certain level of jeopardy. Mm-hmm. So it's something that we have to pay attention to as we go forward, because once we start to celebrate Carnival, we throw all caution to wind, and it can pose a problem. So I think we need to just sensitize our people that we need to pay attention. It's still with us.
Yeah.
And not all of us, not a high percentage of
vaccination is still available.
Yes,
I'm to understand. Yeah.
So this is things that we just need to pay attention to as we move into the festive
very
season.
important, Chris. Well, one of the issues coming up, Chris, and I need to mention this, is youth violence, gun crimes, rising crimes in general in Grenada. It's interesting that just looking at the statistics, the last one available that I was able to put my hands on, that in 2020, our crime rate was about 12.44. That is homicide crime rates, yeah? If you compare that to TNT, it was like 38, Dominica 20. And of course, this is per 100,000. But what is important, and this is 2020 numbers, so we know that with the spike we've had recently in terms of youth violence in particular and gun crimes, there's a need for concern. I also want to point out, Chris, that when I look up, there's an advisory bulletin that talks about crime rates in Grenada. You know what it's mentioning? It's mentioning sexual crimes. Be careful. It's advising visitors to be mindful of sexual crimes, to take precaution, because our sexual crime rate is 32% per 100,000. So that's high, anyhow you look at it, in my view. So there's concern with what's happening right now. We need, and particularly among youth, so this is something, and I want to say that, Chris, this is something that we'll have to keep on this agenda in Community Forum. We have to bring the persons concerned, the experts here, to discuss this issue. It's a matter of concern.
It is a matter of concern, and I mean, when you look at the sexual abuse issue, it has been with us for quite a long time.
Yes.
And the rates have been stubbornly high for quite a long time.
Yes.
And that is only what is reported.
Yes.
We're not talking about what is not reported.
Yeah.
So it could be much higher than what we're seeing.
Yeah.
But it is troubling that you're seeing our young people having less tolerance to deal with issues of dispute or issues that would arise among themselves and with other persons. I mean, the other violent crimes with gun-related and so on, you could say there probably is some issues with drug-related and gang and so on. But the one that troubles me most, Byron, is the issue with our youths in terms of the children that's at school and young people who would go out to have enjoyment in a fete or something, walking with knives and spikes and all of that. It's like the whole environment have changed in what we used to know in our time.
Yeah.
And it is really troubling because when you look at the age of young people that's been incarcerated, it is dropping and dropping. So probably it had 25 was the average. Now it's down in the early 20s, and it's probably lower again. I haven't seen the recent statistics, but when you see all the things that's being reported, it is a real concern that our young people, I remember them, our youths are the one that need to push this nation forward in a lot of areas and aspects. Labor, creativity.
We need them.
We
That's the
need
point.
them.
That's the point you're
Yes,
making. We
yes.
need
so
them.
we need to have them focus
Yeah.
properly.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of it, being a mediator, is training these young people from school and otherwise how to deal with situations.
Conflict resolution.
Conflict resolution
Yeah,
and deal
yeah,
with it,
yeah.
so that
Yeah.
they know there's another part
Yeah.
besides violence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so.
With all of that, Chris, there's been some good news. The Point Celine rescue operation, the pilot and passenger being rescued by by the Royal Grenadian Police Force,
Yeah.
the Coast Guard and
Coast
others.
Guard and so on.
Kudos to them. I think this is positive for Grenada. You know, we were able to respond. We were able to make a good rescue. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal, especially what we just saw recently with that submarine in the U.S. that imploded and went down to look at the ship.
Yeah.
You know, it's a big thing to have a plane,
Yeah.
crash.
Yes.
Did send out the Mayday
Yeah.
requesting
Yeah.
help, and our response was
Yeah.
on target to save lives. Granted, it was 2, but the point is lives were saved.
Lives were saved.
And you know, it's something that we must commend the RFGPF and all the other agencies that assisted.
Of course, Chris, 1 year. When was it? Last 1 year, we had the Prime Minister 1 year since the NDC would have won the election. And we heard the Prime Minister address, national address. What did you make of it?
Well, I thought a lot of it was positive.
Yeah.
He spoke, and you would expect the speech to be political to some respect
Yes.
and
Yes.
factual in other
Yeah.
respects. So he highlighted the issue of the pension payments.
Yeah.
You know that
Promises, so to speak.
Yeah. The bi-monthly salary payment, all of those things were achieved based on the campaign that he presented, and they have achieved. So that is positive. On his transformation agenda, you know, he is showing that there's things that can be changed, and he requests the help and assistance of the nation to do that. And I think those were positives.
Yeah.
The aspect of maintaining the economy at a state where there is good economic activity and growth is another positive. A new government coming in and continuing a lot of the programs from the last government is also good for the economy and for people who is looking at risk and understanding confidence and what. So the confidence aspect from an economic point of view has been well managed in my view. I think though the ministry that deals under MIT and implementation of projects still have a lot of work to do.
Well, the IMF report did pointed out, in fact, oversight, implementation, and other issues. Of course, they have reported some increase in this area, but when you talk about numbers of implementation, there's always what those numbers say.
Yeah, and
you know?
if you listen to the speech carefully, it would have been, Prime Minister spoke about some actual projects on the ground that have started, boots on the ground, things going on.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of things where he spoke about contracts being renegotiated to get things like the UK SIF and so on. That is not implementation. That is contract review. We didn't have people on the ground, projects starting, tractors running and so on.
The other point about implementation of projects on a whole, Chris, is that even though you have a rate of implementation, what the critical thing to measure in projects are the outcome. In other words, not so much, it's important, yes, that you would have spent, let's say, 8.5 as was reported in the SEED program. Not the SEED program, the finance available for the small business development. But the question is, from the delivery of those funds, how many of those projects are successful? How much employment? How many persons are employed? You know, so the outcomes. I'm waiting to hear the outcomes of those projects. What did it achieve actually?
Capacity to implement is where we have always struggled as a country. Capacity here means, do we have the number of engineers that could take on 4 or 5 projects under the PSIP program? Do we have the type of equipment that could take on all of these projects simultaneously? And remember, the private sector is competing with you in terms of equipment and personnel and so on. So the capacity here is not only about the contracts and getting the money or securing the money, is actually using the money by having boots on the ground and equipment. And this is what CCC would have done for us years ago with roads. They would have brought in all the equipment, brought in all the engineers, so the projects could have been implemented at a particular rate. And that is the challenge we have.
That we have, personnel. Of course, the opposition, the NNP did respond. I mean, one of the issues I recall was that, what were the challenges? You didn't hear so much of the challenges that the government faced in that year. They talked a lot about the accomplishments and the achievement. but it's a challenge the crime rate, it's a challenge the unemployment rate. You know what? I would have liked to hear some of those, because it's a real world situation. It's not all smooth.
I mean, as I said in the previous program that we had, that the 1 year celebration of the party achievements is good.
Yeah.
But remember, after 18 months, the honeymoon time is over.
So there's another 6 months to go, Chris?
Yeah, a lot of hard questions will come to the government. On
So that's fine. With the other point, CARICOM Day. We have a holiday on the 4th of July, 50 years of CARICOM. Chris, my only issue with this is that when I think of the 4th of July, I'm thinking about U.S. independence. I mean, was it possible to fix it to another day? I don't know. But anyway, it's a holiday, it's a national holiday, whatever. Are you happy with this?
I am not sold on the idea of this holiday for CARICOM Day.
Is it going to be annually, or this is a one-off, 50 years?
It says it's a one-off.
It's a one-off.
Right.
Okay.
But
Fine.
you see,
okay.
Byron, I suppose my feeling about it, I don't know if we have a lot of things to celebrate about CARICOM. I mean, I have been around
Free
CARICOM
trade,
for a while.
transportation.
Yeah, but CARICOM is like, we talk a lot about what we'd like to see in the ideal world.
Yeah.
But we can't get it right because all of us as countries try to protect our turf.
Yeah.
So travel within the CARICOM, for example, you could use a license. Only in the OECS that working.
Yeah.
That ain't working nowhere else in the CARICOM region. The movement of people, the movement of skills. I mean, there is so much things we have for CARICOM that we expect to work, and it's just not working because all of us in our countries as prime ministers in our kingdom, and if it's not working for us, we're not giving it a big. So I hear that we're doing this celebration and giving this holiday, but I'm not sold.
So it's a day of reflection then of how we can really make
That's
it work.
what we like to see.
Yeah, that's what
All right,
I'd like
I'll
to
vote
see.
you.
Fine, okay. Viewers, we're going to take a short break. At this time, when we come back, we'll be introducing our guests and having a very, very interesting conversation. Please stay with us.
Along your lines.
Yes. Be right back.
Concerned about your general health and wellness?
Do you need to know your complete blood count, lipid profile, or HbA1c?
Maybe you need to get a renal, thyroid, or liver function test.
Interested in STI screening for HIV, syphilis, herpes, chlamydia, or gonorrhea?
All of these tests, plus hundreds more, are available at Allied Laboratories.
Allied Laboratories welcomes you. You can find us here on Gladstone Road in Grenville, in the building next to Calico, on the second floor, adjacent to Dr. Isaac's office. Or you can find us here on Grand Anse Main Road, adjacent to South Winds, opposite the entrance of Excel Plaza. Contact our Grenville branch at 410-3488 or 419-1588, or send us an email at alliedlabgrenville@gmail.com. You can contact our Grand Anse branch at 403-3488 or 404-3488, or send us an email at alliedlabstgeorge@gmail.com.
Fit for life and Allied Laboratories. We're taking care of Grenada.
Welcome back to Community Forum. Myself, Byron Campbell, co-host Chris Diali. And let me introduce our special guest this evening. He is Leonard St. Bernard. Sir, you're a scientist. Your qualification is quite impressive, I'll tell you. You're an agribusiness specialist. You've worked in both the private and public sector. You're head of laboratory services at the Grenada Bureau of Standards. You've worked regionally and continue to serve with distinction, I know, on the GCNA board. And I say this because I have experienced you serving, sir. And most important, you're an agribusiness practitioner, the owner of a farm. It's not just theory, you're practical. Welcome
Thank
to
you.
Community Forum. Let me start
Thank you,
by...
and good night to your viewers.
Yeah. I want to start from most recently you've been contracted by the government of Grenada on a World Bank project as a technical specialist with responsibilities for agro-processing and agribusiness in general. Tell us a little about this project, and what is of particular interest to us is what are the outcomes of, what is going to be the outcomes of this project, and to what extent will they be quantifiable? You know, because
Okay.
very often, Mr. St. Bernard, we have these large projects, millions of dollars, they start, they end, but we're not seeing the tangibles.
Okay.
But tell us what attracted you to this project also, and where is it going?
Well, as you know, my first love is always agro-processing. As a chemist, that is where my heart is. So once given the opportunity to contribute, I basically, took it up. The project is basically a $10 million project, right? It's a facility which is available to the government. Only about 1.2 million of the 10 million would actually be spent on the agro-processing component. There are 7 components in total. So on the agro-processing component is one component of it. For the agro-processing component, there are several outcomes that we expect, right? And I think the means of verification would be easy and simple in that they're very tangible to measure. The first one is the establishment of our agro-processing center. Because as your colleague Chris, who is respected in that area, would tell you that most single agro-processing business that would have been started in Grenada would have failed. The average lifetime is probably about 2 to 3 years, right? And the reason for that is because in Grenada, we don't have the necessary infrastructure to support agro-processing. And when I talk about infrastructure, I talk about institutions, I'm talking about organizations, I'm talking about facilities. So somebody wants to basically make a product. There's a very limited means by which they can develop their capacity, right? And then there is even less services that they could basically, subscribe to, right? Now, if you look at, for example, Trinidad, Jamaica, and even in St. Lucia in recent times, if I am making, let me say, seasoning sauce, right, I could wholesale purchase my peppers at one location, right? I can go to agro-processing center and I could get assistance with the preparation of the product, the bottling, the packaging, the labeling of the product for a small fee. There's actually cold storage space that I could rent, right? And all this could assist me, so I don't have to have the capital. I don't have to go to the bank to take a loan to get into business. Once I get into the business and I get adequate turnover and I start to build some funds, then I could look at investing back into the business.
So you're not optimistic about this project going forward then? Because you seem to indicating that based on our history, economy of scale.
So what I'm saying is that this project is seeking to solve that issue by...
Is recognizing these problems.
Is recognizing these problems and basically seeking to solve that issue by establishing an agro-processing center.
Okay.
So we have a small pilot plant at Produce Chemist Lab, which is only 910 square feet. We recognize that 910 square feet cannot facilitate that. So under the project, we're looking at scaling it up to a 3,000 square foot facility and providing the necessary equipment, right, to that facility and the necessary staffing and training to the staffing So when you, as an agro-processor, want to get into a particular business, you can come to that facility and access the training, gain experience on the equipment, gain experience working with the staff, fine-tuning your product, and getting your product right before you actually go out and invest funds, right, into that. So that's one part of the project. Additionally, under that project, we trying to identify 10 medium to large agro-processors that could be supported, right? Of course, we have very strict criteria that they need to qualify with. So they need to basically be active in agro-processing. They need to have certain records. They need to be registered. They need to have a tax number.
But it seemed to be
They need
similar
have a history.
to a recent project, the ARICOM project, that basically again supported agro-processors.
Right.
Are these processors able to be part of this project also?
Right. So, yes, and the answer to the question is yes.
Okay.
So, we're looking to identify 10 key agro-processors that we could qualify for up to $30,000
Okay. Okay.
right, in support, right, for either production, packaging, training.
Yeah.
Right. And then we have a facility of up to $10,000 for smaller agro-processors. And we're looking to identify at least 25. Right? So those are the main components of the project, as well as we plan to upgrade some of the services or some of the institutions that support agro-processing in Grenada. Right? And we also looking at basically one of the key things that I would like to see happen is that in the past, Grenada had the Bureau of Standards in Grenada, for example, was an ISO member. They're no longer since 2004. So we have no institution in Grenada as a member, as an active member ISO. Right?
Are you still affiliated with the Grenada Bureau of Standards?
No, I'm not. But what I'm saying is, I'm just using the Bureau of Standards as an example because
Okay.
it was a ISO
Yeah.
member.
Yeah.
But right now, we have no institution in Grenada, no government institution that's an ISO member.
Thanks for making that distinction.
Right. Right. So what we basically want to do is to ensure that whether it be the Ministry of Agriculture, Veterinary Department, whether it be the Ministry of Health, whether it be the Bureau of Standards, but we need a government institution that is a full ISO member so that the country could benefit from actually participating in the development and in the implementation of ISO standards and methods. Because since 2004, we have not been participating, so the standards, we don't have a vote, right? We have not been reviewing except through our regional counterparts in CrossQ, right?
But we can still do HACCP standards and qualifications.
Well, we
Chris?
don't have. I mean, the last institution in Grenada that was HACCP certified was Marketing Board, and we know what is the situation with Marketing Board.
Yeah.
So that whole, we have Marketing Board have a whole facility in River Road with a lab and everything and processes and procedures that's supposed to fit under HACCPs. No, with all the transition with Marketing Board, I'm not sure that they're up to standard and they may be on the brink of losing their HACCP certification. I don't know. But that is a place, and I was about to ask the question of, because agro-processing is along food and food lines, wouldn't HACCPs be more critical than ISO? Because
Right.
ISO...
So HACCP is basically a food safety system, right? Which is part of a Codex standard, right? Now, the thing about it is that Codex, we have membership in Codex, the Bureau is the focal point for Codex, but all the Codex standards, the methods in them are ISO methods. So in other words, Codex will, when you're part of a Codex committee, right, for example, and you're reviewing a particular standard, like I was the head of the last Codex committee, and we were reviewing the nutmeg standard, right? What we realize is that yes, we had the technical capability to review the nutmeg standard and to negotiate. But when it come down to the actual testing methods, they were all ISO testing methods. So while we could have contributed to the development of the standard, to the development of the method and how the method is applied, we had no contribution because we're not ISO members, right? And we find that countries like India, for example, right, who have a lot of scientists and a lot of laboratories and things, they tend to dominate at the ISO level. So the method that we're using to test our nutmeg for percentage moisture, for percentage essential oil, for mold and so on, was all developed by the Indians, basically, and passed as the international standard. So what I'm saying is, if we were to become members of ISO again, we would have a say in determining that. And I think that's an important
This is
point.
important. It might be a bit complicated for some of our listeners. Look, I want to go forward on this. Look, the GCNA, Nutmeg Association, you've been on the board for the past 2 years. You've been volunteering your
past
technical
3 years.
3 years. You've been volunteering more or less your technical services to the GCNA. You've been leading the work on the Agricom project, the Bolio project, which is
correct.
agro-processing in reality, because this I understand could be a game changer for the nutmeg industry, because traditionally we have not been very, what's the word, effective in doing our own value added, because we continue to send most of our nutmegs overseas. Tell us a little bit about this Bolio initiative, where it's at, what's happening, how, from an agro-processing, agribusiness point of view, this is good for Grenada.
Right. So the Bolio agro-processing plant, right, is actually the brightest spot, right, in the nutmeg industry in the last 3 years, right? To be honest with you, I see it as a gold mine, waiting to waiting to be exploited.
Okay.
Right. And the reason for that is because in Bolio, what we were able to do on the middle floor of Bolio, we had a nutmeg processing unit which was set up in the early 2000s, right, where we did organic nutmeg. And that facility was set up to export organic nutmeg to Vermont, right? I think, Mr. Campbell, you were the chairman of the board at that time, so you should remember this.
I do remember.
Right. So we were able to refurbish all those equipment because since Hurricane Ivan 2004, those equipment was sitting there. And not only that, the equipment was vandalized because you had people break into the building and steal all the copper wiring. And so we had to rewire the whole building, we had to refurbish all the motors, we had to rewire motors and so on. So I'm pleased to announce that it is up and running. And that would be, Bolio is now going to be GCNA's second processing station.
So what exactly happens in Bolio? You're
Right.
cracking nutmeg, you're
cracking, basically, you're using an air classifier to separate out the shell. So the shell will blow out one way, the nutmegs will come down another way. And then you're separating the pieces and you're grading the nutmeg based on size using a flotation table.
Right.
Right. And then once it comes out, then the fine tuning is still done by the people. So you still have people, the same people would still be employed. So you're not losing any employment. But the rate of process is going to be dramatically increased. So what it would take Guelph to do in a month would be able to be done in Bolio in like 3 days.
Right. So this is just cracking a nutmeg and separating.
Right. But that's just the middle floor.
Right.
So on the lower floor, we established a new laboratory facility. So and again, GCNA again after Hurricane Ivan, and I was working with the FAO at that time. The FAO provided a lot of laboratory equipment to GCNA in 2008. But GCNA never had the capacity to implement the lab, so the equipment remained in boxes.
So I want to get to this point, research and development, and I want to take it holistically. Because in agro-processing, and if we were to make this agribusiness of agro-processing, the issue for me is, and you know, I had Project Chemist Lab on my notepad here to understand what's happening there or not happening there, because Project Chemist Lab, to me, is an important cog when it comes to research and development and what happens. So if I want to get into agro-processing and I come up with an idea of doing guava in a special way, you know, whether it's confectionery or whatever, is there a place in the project, as you have in it, that will target research and development? And you talk about the agro-processing center. Is there a part in the center that deals with R&D so that we could develop products, or even though we have existing products that people are making, is there a way the R&D could look at packaging? We could do it better, smarter. Is that available under the project?
Well, basically, part of the project is to further develop the Produce Chemist Lab. So the Produce Chemist Lab would still remain with the R&D component of it. So the idea is that the existing facility in Tantine will still remain a lab and will still do the processing, the research and development, The pilot plant part of it, the 910 square feet, is going to be absorbed by the lab, and that is going to be replaced by the agro-processing center, right? The other institution that we need to look at as well too is the Science and Technology Council.
Yes.
Because the Science and Technology
Being
Council is
defunct.
supposed to be that level above the Produce Chemist Lab that basically sets policy for that research and
Is
development.
it active? Is it active? Is it?
As far as I
Not
know,
active at
no.
all. No.
So that is another area that we need to basically
The World
look
Bank
at.
is addressing this also, or
It's
project?
not being directly addressed under the project, but it's something that we have flagged in the ministry to look at, right? And it's something that I would expect that in the upcoming years,
So, Cindy, let me ask
it
you
would be
a question.
basically looked at.
You talk about the failure rate, which has been high in agro-processing. And based on what I have listened and what you said, you are changing how we do agro-processing projects, because you want to set up this unit, you want to provide assistance differently. The original concept was, I have an idea to make juices, I go to a bank or institution that can give me money, I buy equipment, I set it up, and I start, I do my marketing, tasting, whatever. This is a little different.
Yeah, this is a little different, and it's because we learn from the mistakes of the past. You see, a lot of people have ideas, bright ideas, good ideas, right? But the implementation is a problem, right? So, under several projects in the past, now that I'm going around assessing agro-processors, I realize that you have projects where people would have gotten equipment, good equipment free. They get it, and they probably try it out once, and they realize they can't really operate it, and they just pack it in a corner, and they go back to doing it the way that they are accustomed. So that is where the agro-processing center come in again, because at the agro-processing center, you would go and you would learn on that piece of equipment. So when it's time for you to get yours, you are already familiar with using the equipment, and you're already familiar with the maintenance aspect of it and how to go about making it. Because there's a big difference between making a product in a kitchen and then sizing up that product to basically, a full-fledged commercial enterprise. Yeah.
And what is the plan to deal with the production aspect? Because one of the greatest challenges in agro-processing would be, apart from labor, is the issue of consistent supply of raw material and whatever particular product. Is there a component of this project that will have an association with Ministry of Agriculture and farmers? So if I tell Byron this, I need 100 pounds of not nutmeg, guava every month, is it that I could get it? And if I can't get it and it's seasonal, again, I think the research and development could put a lot of things out of season in the sense that we know it must be seasonal. Yeah. Is there a thing about how we freeze, what type of freezing methods we will use to preserve quality and taste as we move
So
forward.
remember I told you that the project had other components besides the agro-processing component. So that's what the other components are supposed to deal with. So there's a crop production component on it, on the project, right? And in that crop production component, one of the things that they're looking at is the use of greenhouses and then the use of chillers to store fresh produce, right? And that will help support the agro-processing aspect of it. Now, you hit a very good point there. Like, for example, during mango season, people drive around and they see all these mangoes on the ground, right? And they say, whoa, look at all these mangoes wasted. But Chris, if I pick up all the mangoes in Grenada during mango season, I only have enough raw material for about a month of production.
And then
Right.
I'm told by an agro-processor, not all the mangoes could give you the kind of flavor that
Flavor,
you want.
right. Yes, yes.
So that's another component that you need to understand.
That's another component of it as well, because some good for juice, some good for drying,
That's
some
right.
good for candying,
Yeah.
right? So you had to basically look at that. Now, that's the beauty of having an agro-processing center, because you would have certain specific equipment. So, for example, you have dehydrators, but the dehydrator will not only be used for mangoes, it would be used for a variety of food, so whatever come into season, as well as you could have some dealing with fish and the bycatch issue, right? All you need to do is just basically have the ability to store the raw, collect and store all the raw material when it becomes available, and then you could schedule the production in the agro-processing center going forward, right? And so if you make it into a proper multi-purpose center, right, with good management, then the sum of all the different squares, let's put it that way, should be enough to make it viable, right? Rather than basically designing a facility, say for example, just to do juices, right? Eventually you will run out of raw material to do juices, then what do you do?
That's the point.
Yeah.
And mango will be in season now, but then you have tamarind come in, you have different
Yeah,
things
different type
coming
of cruise.
that-
Because I thought it was a very important point you raised there, that because the production limitations that we face.
That's correct.
And then you have what are the processing opportunities and distribution. I mean, these are another phase of this. But does the project address any food security issue?
Yes.
And I mean, I want to clarify for our viewers, because sometimes when we hear the word food security, we think of, well, we just have a food available, but it
Yeah,
talks
but it's not
about
just food available.
exactly. It talks about it's a lot more specific about that, you know. But to what extent it addresses this issue?
Right.
Sembi?
The actual project was designed as a food and nutrition security. It's actually an emergency fund,
It's an emergency. It's a grant fund.
right?
It's a grant?
No. As far as I know, it's a credit line.
Credit line. Okay.
Right.
So it's crucial in any event,
Yeah.
regardless of the source, that we manage
Yeah.
properly.
So
Yeah.
we had to bear that in mind. So all these things that I just talked about had to be done in a year.
1 year.
1 year.
That's a short time.
That's a short time.
That is implementation and capacity issue.
Yeah,
right here.
exactly.
Whoa.
Right? And the implementation and capacity issues will have to be dealt with, right? And will have to be dealt with pretty fast.
Yeah, as
in
a-
order
as
to
an
be able,
emergency?
Yeah, as
Yeah,
an
yeah,
emergency. In order to be able
Yeah.
to get full access to this. Now, food security, people tend to see food security as a one-dimensional thing, but it isn't. It's a multi-dimensional thing. You might say, it have a lot of food in Grenada, and, we have, but you ever see somebody who is obese but still malnourished?
Yeah.
Because he's eating the wrong food. So
yeah.
the nutrition aspect of it is very important.
Yeah.
So we don't only want to be able to stock food for the sake of stocking food, but
Yeah.
we want to be able to stock nutritious food that could provide the necessary sustenance. And that is a big component on
Of the project.
the
Also
project.
affordable.
Yes.
And available in sufficient quantities. Yeah.
I
Because-
have a concern I want to throw to Sembi because, management of the center and what you're speaking about, which is excellent in terms of changing how we do things, is going to be crucial. And is there any consideration of using a private-public sector marriage to help with the management and to help with how we do what we do and to ensure that these things are responsibly dealt, KPIs set as I'm sure there would be for the use of the money.
Well, definitely. And I think you hit the nail on the head because we need the private sector involvement in such a center. Such a center will not be successful unless you have a private sector involvement, because in the long run, once you establish a center, I would expect that the center would be established as a sort of statutory body initially. So it's not managed under no particular ministry, but it has a board of directors, all right? You hire professional people, right? And they run it as a business. It has its own account, right? And it can buy and sell and trade, and it's a legal entity, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if, the business community would want to invest in something like that. And I think
the same agro-processors that you're inviting to come and process, I think should be given, a stake in the building to either take shares and so on, so that they ensure that this unit continues to exist to give the help that they need. And as they grow, as you say, they branch out on their own, but they could still use it for even not just for processing, but technology development, research and development, chemistry, packaging, all of that. Because it's not only, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, it's not only about processing, but how do I get a better label? Is there a technical expert in the center that deals with packaging and could advise on labeling and so forth and so on? Is that thought?
So persons will be there, and there will also be linkages to some of the key institutions. So like, for example, the Bureau of Standards, which regulate TBT matters, right? TBT meaning technical barriers to trade, will also have to be part of that and probably have a seat on the board, right? So that you establish that linkage there. So once you have these issues,
packaging standards and labeling standards and so on.
Simbi, climate change, that we know has placed intensifying pressure, a lot of pressure on agribusiness and agriculture in general, in the whole industry. From an adaptation and mitigation point of view, is the project, is there any dimension to address this issue?
Yeah, actually, most of the fine details in the project is basically pushing you in that direction, right? So, for example, the cold storage containers that we basically talking about for the crop aspect of it, they're all going to be solar powered, right? So even when we select equipment, we selecting equipment that basically is energy efficient. We're looking at equipment that basically does not have a lot of spare part requirements, right? We're looking at things like rainwater harvesting, right? We're looking at permaculture, right? So we're looking at a number of these
appropriate technology, including things like using biogas, right? Technology, right? Composting. 1 year?
Right?
No.
Well, I have no control over the 1 year. But the thing about it is,
but how realistic is it? I mean, that's the question.
Well, the good thing about it is, for the last few months, right, we've actually identified, so all the equipment are ready.
Okay.
So you started in January.
Yes.
Right. This year is January in 2023.
So for this year so far,
we're halfway through.
Right, so this year so far, myself and my colleague Kizzy Rennie, because there's only two of us in the department.
Who's the project manager overall?
The project manager overall is the Ministry of Agriculture.
Oh, it's someone of the ministry portfolio.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so for the agro-processing component, for this year so far, myself and my colleague Kizzy Rennie, who is in China now, by the way,
okay,
with 14 agro-processors.
Okay.
Right.
Is that trip related to the project or something?
Well, we hope that some of these agro-processors that would have been exposed would now come back and be able to benefit from the project.
Okay.
Right. But what we've done is that we've been able to evaluate over 200 agro-processors.
Yeah.
We've been able to evaluate the produce chemist lab,
Yeah.
right? Do a proper assessment, meet with persons. We've come up with a list of equipment already. We've gotten quotations for the equipment. We've been able to submit.
So the 3,000 square feet center is going to be going where? It's going to be located.
Well, I can't tell you that yet, but we have identified a couple sites, but we haven't closed the deal on them yet. But we have at least 3 sites.
Chris, you know, whatever could go wrong in this process. Let me give you an example. Agricom project, I was part of it, you know, and I could speak about this. And I had to produce a certain amount of guavas relating to De La Granada Industries as part of that fold aggregator. There are different names for it. The guavas I ordered were the standard guavas, the yellow. Somebody you could help me there, the yellow, the red. But when the guavas started producing, it was table guavas. So they propagated essentially the wrong guavas for me. You know? So you see the issues. So I have to start all over. I have to replant them. I only determined or discovered the quality or the variety only when they started production.
Well, you see, the good thing about that is that in terms of agro-processing, we could still use that.
You can still use it?
Yeah.
So don't destroy it?
No, don't destroy it.
Okay, fine. Excellent.
So
Okay,
my
good.
question to Cindy is, we have 6 months left to go in this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we need
But
to have
the-
a facility done, design,
No, but
equipment
the
in.
project actually only started in June. Eh?
Oh, so you have till probably May next year.
Yeah, so I had to
To
May
get
next
everything.
year. But what we did, because we knew we were applying for a credit line, and
okay.
we anticipated that we would have been
Okay.
successful,
Yeah.
we jump ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I know, as Byron say, plenty things could happen to
I'm
derail
telling
you.
Yeah, not true. And it's a real world. This
Yeah,
happens. But Christian, the use of technology. So you say this is integrated in the project. That would be, I mean, what about the marketing? It's quite all and good. We produce it, we process it, we have the product. Where's the marketing in all of this? Does the project address this issue?
Well, to be honest with you, Byron, to me, the marketing is the easiest part.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the markets for these products are already established, right?
Yes,
And remember,
I agree.
it's a food security project. So
Yeah.
the idea is that we produce these things because if you notice, the price of goods, the imported goods, keep going
Yeah.
up. Eh? If you go to the supermarket and you compare price from last year to this year, the idea is to be able to put these products out on the market and stabilize or try and bring down the price of the goods. So that is the food security aspect of it.
My follow-up question to you on that is changes in consumer taste. How is it affecting local demands? Look, you go in the supermarket and you look around, of course.
Right.
Tell me.
But the change in consumer taste
Yeah.
is really about the difference between fresh and processed goods. Because if you
A
notice,
big part of it.
right, a big part of it is that. Because if you notice, the younger people, the older folks like us,
Yeah.
we like our food fresh. So we want to go and get breadfruit.
Hold on,
and
like us?
dashi.
Wait a minute, hold on. You're in a
and
different
so on.
category.
Right, I had a slightly different category. Right? Whereas
Yeah.
the younger persons, they don't want to have to peel the breadfruit and so on. So they
Right.
want to go and buy something in a little packet.
Yeah.
They still want the breadfruit, but they want the breadfruit to come in a little packet
No,
where they
but-
can just break it open.
Don't get me
and
started
throw
on that
it-
breadfruit
throw
thing,
it in a
because
pot. Yeah.
I have a passion about breadfruit, and I can't understand why up to this day I have to go and buy a breadfruit whole, and I ain't sure what the inside like, if it ripe.
you
Why you
see-
can't cut it from it, gut it, and put it in a nice bag and sell it to me?
So you
I'll
see,
pay more.
he's showing off his youthfulness.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
But let's be a little more specific. What are some of the products we can expect coming out of this project specifically? Let's identify them. Breadfruit
Okay.
is one.
Well, basically,
Yeah.
Breadfruit
what
chips.
Chips.
what we
yeah.
expect
Yeah.
to come out. So we expect a number of dry fruits
Okay.
and vegetables. We expect a lot of things like soup mix because we plan to use like a lot of the starchy items, dry them, grind them, right? So
Yeah.
put them into various products. So we expect I would say a dry food line.
Like banana flour, green fig
Flour,
flour, fruit
right.
flour,
Dasheen, yeah.
and that kind of thing.
That kind of thing, yeah. And not only leaving it at the flour, but now adding, spices and a little salt and everything to the flour, putting it in a packet. So when you want a soup now, you can just boil your water, open the pack, pour it in.
Convenient.
Right. So to make it convenient, to make it 21st century, 2
Yeah,
minutes.
because our traditional, our history is that our ladies have been in the kitchen more than the men.
Yeah.
And I'm choosing my words carefully here. And now our ladies are out working just as the men. And the cooking is not as we used to be. So the issue, if we make the things more convenient for both the men and the ladies now, it's easier to get things done, cook a good meal and go to work.
The thing is, Mr. Seminard, you're not only this scientist, this highly technical person, and providing this kind of services to the country. I think we're very fortunate. But on the practical level also, you're a farm owner and operator in rural Grenada. I must ask you this. What are some of the challenges you've seen there as an operator yourself, as a practitioner, as a farmer? What is happening?
Right. So as a farmer, if I put on my farmer's hat,
Yes.
the two key problems that farmers have. One, lack of affordable quality labor. And two, pretty larceny. Right? If we can make a big dent on these two, we would go a long way. You see, people, a lot of the time, you hear, the unemployment rate in Grenada is so high, and so on and so on, and so forth, and people can't get jobs and so on. The reality of the situation for large farmers like me, we can't get labor. And even when we get labor, the labor basically is not suitable. So if I put on a field with a number of different plants, I just can't hire somebody off the street to come and cut grass, because then I'll lose half or more of the plants. The person needs to know, well, this is a breadfruit plant, this is a nutmeg plant, this. Right. So that's just an example. Pruning again. And pruning is something highly scientific, but can, especially like in crops like nutmeg, can increase your yield dramatically.
Soursop.
Yeah.
Right?
Or citrus.
Or citrus,
right.
Yeah.
How many people, I wish.
You see, don't get me
people could call
started,
me
because
and
I
say
always tell
they're
Byron, I hear you too, which I agree with, but I always add two more. Pest control and extension services.
Yes.
They're almost non-existent in our agriculture business and what we do, because I cannot understand all the guys that have been trained, ladies and gentlemen, in Ministry of Agriculture for coming out and meeting farmers and understanding their issues, trying to resolve issues in extension services is almost non-existent. And that is a problem I think we have as well, because farmers is cook and bottle washer. They have to get seeds, they have to plant, they have to make sure the crop come good, they have to fertilize, they have to do all of that, and then they still want them to deal with pest control, run a business, keep books. Come on.
Yeah.
They can't do everything.
Yeah, it's a little too much.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you mention about cost of inputs. I didn't hear you mention access to finance.
Well, you wanted me to mention all
No,
the
I don't know.
problems?
I don't know.
I highlighted the two main problems.
But cost of input, a year ago we were
Right.
paying $75 a bag. Now it's $145, $150.
Right, you're talking about fertilizer. Right.
Although GCNA recently announced fertilizer available at $75.
From where?
GCA.
Cocoa Association.
Yeah.
Okay, right, yeah.
Cocoa Association.
So that's awesome. That's good. I don't know the quality or where it's come from, but that's also a factor, in it. But labor. But what do you see as a solution to the labor, though? It's an issue. But how do we deal with this?
The solution to the labor is we need to reestablish a proper agricultural training school. And not an agricultural training school to train people to go and be technocrats in the Ministry of Agriculture.
Yeah.
So not at the UE type level and the ACAF type level, but you have a lot of youths coming out, and they can make good money, because if somebody qualify as a pruner, for example, they can come, they can prune from me, you,
Yeah, they
Chris,
move
in
around.
one
Yeah,
day,
yeah.
move around, and you'll be surprised how
Yeah.
much money they could make.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a skill, and it's a skill in demand. For example, somebody to drain land, there are very few people now who know
Contouring
how
and,
to right. how to-
Even
yeah.
fertilizing is
Right.
a skill.
Yeah.
It's a skill. So if you have a school where you train people how to do these things in general, and then they specialize in a particular area. So you go in now as a youth, you go into this agriculture school and you realize, I ain't good at cutlassing, but you see the draining and the contouring, that's my thing. And you specialize, and then you could come out and start a small business. Just like how you're landscaping, you start a drainage and...
I shouldn't
business.
consider bringing in workers from outside the country. Chris, that question is yours.
Okay.
No, I mean, Byron, I've always articulated, first of all, our population too small
Yeah.
to
Okay.
keep businesses going at a good rate.
Yeah.
But again, as Saint B indicated, you don't want any and anybody coming into agriculture. Agriculture traditionally have been a kind of sector and industry where probably anything goes.
Yes.
And to get it at a commercial level and a level that will attract young people as a business to get and make real money. Remember, that is the one sector we have in the country that have all kind of concession.
Yes.
All type of concessions, and we don't exploit it. It exists in every country like that. In the U.S., the farmers have major concessions.
It's called subsidies, yeah.
Right, and at the end of the day, what attracts, in the U.S. now, they have a problem with labor as well, because these farms are from generation to generation, whether it's citrus or whatever you're doing, and they're running out of generations. And they need to get people now to come in and provide the kind of skilled
aging
labor.
farmer,
That's right,
like we
and what
saw
is
here.
happening? We still need to get there, and as Saint B alluded to, how do we do it differently? And that's an excellent idea and opportunity for young people. Young people don't want to come and juke a fork and, cutlass with the traditional way, the back breaking and that sort of thing. We need to find out how...
It's a technical school.
Yes, how we could do this differently
Yeah,
to attract them.
yeah.
Because the reality of it, Byron, what you could do at 20, you can't do it now at 60.
Absolutely. At
Right,
70,
so
we're talking about
That
60.
youth, that youth element is critical
Absolutely.
for
Absolutely.
efficiencies
Yeah.
and the rate of work.
Yeah.
And we need to find a way.
Yeah. Gentlemen, I was told that this is all the time we have. Sembi, we really appreciate your presence this evening, But you have to come back because we're just touching the top, the top of the iceberg.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
We'll bring
really
him back.
appreciate
We'll
it.
bring him back in January to find out where the project is at.
No problem.
So, gentlemen-
I look forward to reporting good news.
Yes. That's what we want. Good news.
Okay, colleagues and viewers, thank you for being with us. That's all the time we have. We want to thank the technical staff at MTV Television, and we'll see you next week at the same time. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Good evening.